Today's video will be an update of our previous video, Perfect Vcarve Inlays. One of the issues that many subscribers would ask about is when we're cutting the mill clearance toolpath, the problem is it wants to clear down to the start depth in one pass, which can be a problem for some smaller CNCs. To work around this issue, I have added one additional toolpath which can take away the amount that was the start depth when setting up the mill toolpath. This is not an issue if you are on a large machine with a spindle, but if you are on a smaller machine, it can be an issue. Enough talk, let's get to it. Okay, let's get this going. Real quickly, I've got a 5x5 board, 3/4 inch thick, datum in the middle. That's all the same you get in everything that you look at. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to import some vector or a ping. We're going to convert it to vectors. And I want to go ahead, let's see here. I want to be on my female layer. I want to make that the active layer. And when we brought that in, that's the import bitmap button. And then we'll come down to trace bitmap. And we got that selected. Yeah, so if we go to the minimum, it gets, it doesn't pick up everything. If we go to the maximum, it has just about what we need. So if I go right here in the center and click preview, apply, then I can close that out. And now I can go back to the bitmap layer and I can delete that bitmap. Okay. And I'll shut that layer off. Okay, so now I got that into the female layer. Once we have the vector files here, all we got to do is go over here, close this out. I'm going to pick Vcarve. I want to pick my start depth. It's going to be 0 on the female. And the flat depth, I want it at 0.3. And I'm using 0.3 just to make the math easy. If you looked at the original video, it was called the 3-2-1 method. So I'm using 0.3 just to make it easier, but it could be just as easily 0.2. Then we'd have 2/3 of 0.2 and then 1/3 of 0.2 for our other measurements. But for right now, just it's 0.3. And we're using a 90-degree V-bit. We're not going to use a clearance path for this one. And we'll calculate. Yep, got to select them vectors every time. Calculate. And there we have. Let's do our preview. And just like that, we have the female side done. I'm going to change this name down here. I'll rename it the female. And what I want to do, I want to go back over here. Now I want to click on this, the female vector, and I want to copy that to layer, and I want to copy it to the male layer. So now I'll come up over here. Okay, so this is that female that we copied over into the male. Make sure male is active. First thing we want to do with this is select it, come over here, we're going to flip it horizontally. And we had to put a vector around the outside. So now we can come over here. And I'm going to show you the way we did it originally. So we would come over here under the Vcarve. I'm going to select both of those. And we got a 90-degree bit, a clearance tool of 0.25. And we're going to calculate that. And let me uncheck those. So let's look at the clearance. And here's where the problem was. When you did the original way we did it, when we do the clearance, you're going to see that it's going to clear the whole amount out of there. And if I show it to you this way, you can see it. See, it's going to take that whole amount and get that down to 3. So let's preview that. Okay. And if I click on this, you can see down here in this bar, it's 3.3. So now I'll come up with the other one and we'll preview that. And there we are. We have a perfect match. That'll fit in the other one like perfectly. But here's the problem. If you don't have, like I have a spindle on mine, I got a 1/2 inch, call it. I can put a good sized bit in there and just hog that out in that one step, like 3/10. But if you got a smaller machine, maybe you can only use 1/4 inch, and your gantry ain't as solid, then you're going to have to take it in a couple different layers, and that's where the problem arises. So this is how we did it originally, but now I'll show you how we're going to modify that and make that still work and do the job. So let's get rid of these. I'm going to delete that one and delete that one. Okay, so here we are. We've already flipped it. We come back over here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to come up here and we're going to do a pocket. And being that we were 3.0 over there, for this pocket, I'm going to start at 0 and I want to go down 2/10 because that's what our start depth was the old way. So whatever that start depth was, that's the figure you want to put in here. So it's going to be 2, and we're going to use a 1/4 inch end mill, and let's see what we got. Reset the preview, and we'll preview that. And you can see it's taking it in, it's going to do, it took 2 different passes at it, so it didn't just plunge all the way down. So now we did that. Now we'll go back, and now we're going to do what we did originally. We're going to come up to Vcarve, and our start depth was 0.2, and our flat depth was 0.1, because remember we take 2/3 of whatever our flat depth was in the first one, and that would be 2 and then 1. So 3, 2, 1. And that don't matter. If you use 2, just take 2/3 and 1/3, and that would be what your figures are here. And we got a 90-degree bit. We're using a 1/4 inch end mill. And we're going to calculate this. And we'll reset the previews. So now we got the Vcarve clear again. And now we're going to do the Vcarve. And there we go. Now we have it's perfect again, just like it was before. But by doing that extra 1 pocket, we were able to go ahead and do it without, taking all this material out in 1 pass. We did it in basically 3 paths. So we got everything we need. Now we can go throw it on the CNC and show you that it'll all match up. Let me rename these just to save confusion. And I'm just going to put mill at the end. Rename. Mill. Creature of habit. Mill. Okay. So now we're going to cut the the female part out. And you'll see this is going to be actual speed, and it'll only take about like 20 or 30 seconds to carve the female part out. You might notice my clamps there and thinking, well, that's going to hit somewhere along the line. But I always do check out my farthest reaches by jogging over to make sure I'm never going to hit those. I know it gets scary at times, but you got to make sure you start in the middle of your project too, because it'll travel over to it. That's when you hit something. It's kind of mesmerizing to watch it. I think the V carving is one of the most satisfying things I have found on the CNC. It's just, the way it does it is just amazing. I think when you first get your CNC and you watch it do a 360 circle and it's perfect, it's like, ooh, this is not going to be bad. And there it is, and now we're done with the female section. Okay, so when we do this, we use the tape method. I used the clamps before, but I was planning on cutting this all the way out to the edge, but I did use a little bigger board than I had in my Vectric software, so I had to end up cutting it off with the bandsaw. But this is how we prepare it, and you don't want to be too cheap with the glue, because you don't want this thing to move. But this is one of the better hold down methods. If you do everything right and you really get it sticking down and you use enough of the glue and everything, it doesn't seem to move. And with V carving, you don't have a lot of side force. It's, pushing down. So it's not one that requires an incredible amount of clamping. And we set that in place with the accelerator, and boom, it's going nowhere. And I'm going to measure where my center is. And I've added a laser to my CNC, which makes doing your XY coordinates just an absolute breeze. Got it speeded up here. And with the new way we're doing it, you can see it's taking it in multiple paths. And that was the problem we had before, because it did all this in one path, which my machine can do, but a lot of the guys were saying that they couldn't get theirs to do that. Now it's carving out the final design. And it don't matter how elaborate that this is, it's going to drop right in every time. And if it doesn't, I can almost guarantee it's user error. Or something moved, or the wrong size bit. You always want to use the same size bit that you used when you did the female. You don't want to change bits. Okay, so there we got that. Now I'm going to take it over and take it to the bandsaw, and we'll get that cut off. And you can see the tape held it down quite well. So now we're going to just cut that edge off. If I'd used the same size wood that I had in my Perfect Vcarve, I would have had that flat all the way to the end, and I wouldn't have to come in here and do this. But a lot of times I'll just put a vector around whatever I'm going to be using in the Vcarve inlay, and then just cut it out like I'm doing here. And there we have it. And you can see how clean it is already. And then over here, and I'm going to show you, I've got the wire brush. This is like a 320 grit brush. And it just takes, that's all it takes to get the little nibblies off of there. As long as you're using a very sharp V-carve bit, it's pretty well there. Now for the moment of truth, and at this point, it's the first time I'm trying it. And then boom, and then it just locks into place. I mean, you can feel it drop in, and you know you got it at that point. I put glue on both surfaces, mainly because I don't want to have any spots unglued. And I get it on both pieces. Just on the outside chance that I missed one of those little pieces. Sometimes you're just in a hurry and you will. And sure enough, that little piece will fall out later. So make sure you got glue on everything. And the best hold down for these, especially for the little ones, are these Bessie bar clamps. They just put so much downward force. I love them for almost everything I do, where I gotta put two pieces together and glue them, and they just work well. And then once this is dry, we'll just take it over to the bandsaw and cut it, and we'll be on our way to finishing it. Okay, so we're over here at the bandsaw, and we'll get this all adjusted up, just enough to clear. We'll get our fence so that we have, we don't, cut the finish board. We just want to cut off that top piece. And there's a gap of about maybe, I don't know, maybe a little less than an 1/8 inch right there. And the blade basically is right in between those two. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Just click the button down below. It's appreciated. Okay, so let's get this thing cut. You're always excited waiting to see what it is going to look like. And there we go. Now we just got to sand that down level with the top of the board. I'll do a little bit of rough sanding right over here. Get that off of there. You can see I'm practicing on a scrap piece of wood there that I already used. And as you're practicing these, you know, you got scrap wood laying around, you're not going to mess up anything. Do 1 or 2 or 3 of these, you'll get your confidence way up, and then you will not hesitate to put a nice inlay on anything you build. Okay, now I'll take it over and use the hand sander. You're trying to get it to the point where it's completely flush. Doesn't take much. And once you have it all sanded down, I'm putting a last little finish sanding on that. And I would, if I wasn't just doing this as a sample, I would probably do a lot more. I'd probably go down to eventually 320 or 500 to get a nice smooth, you know, finish. But you'll see that there's no gaps or anything in the inlay. And I've cut these in half before so that you can see that, you know, it's solid wood all the way. That little gap down below it is filled with glue. So it's solid all the way through. Just threw a little lacquer on to give you an idea. And there's another pretty much perfect inlay. And it don't get much easier than this. I mean, try it and I bet the first time out you'll have it.